one is my director of studies and one is an ex-co-worker. So just feel free to jump in any time with questions ready, because yeah, there's sort of only a few people in here, and I'm happy to take questions as they come up. If anything I go through too quickly, or yeah. Right. Okay, I'll get my slides working this time, hopefully. Okay, can everyone see those?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Right. Okay. So yeah, we've been sort of looking at sarcasm detection, looking at a comparison between natural language processing models and non-native speakers, comparing sort of their abilities or lack thereof, and seeing if there's any kind of similarities that we can find between them. Oops, sorry. So first of all, looking at sarcasm detection in general, why it poses a challenge. So these kind of models, they're quite good at detecting positive and negative mood or valency. So like zeros and ones, they're very good at detecting something like that. However, figurative language, in particular sarcasm and irony, is a bit of a problem for it, because the meaning is usually the opposite to what's actually being written. So like, just a really simple example is when it's raining really heavily, you might say, oh, great weather today, isn't it? So the actual words are very positive, but the meaning is opposite, which is why these models are sometimes not very good at detecting it. And in addition, my example, even that very simple one, does require some level of context, the fact that it is raining, because if it's a very sunny day, then that sentence is just a very normal sentence. And this sort of combination of requiring context, which not only can be language based, it can be, you know, body language and other contextual information, is really hard to put into a program. And even native speakers struggle with this, so it's no wonder that non-native speakers and models do as well. To the point that websites like Reddit, they have to use this /s to indicate that they're being sarcastic, and Twitter or X, they often use the hashtag sarcasm, again, to show that it's being sarcastic, because when it's text only, yeah, as I say, even native speakers struggle with it. Just a very sort of quick distinction I like to make is the difference between verbal irony and sarcasm. Some people do distinguish between them, but for the purposes of this study, there is no distinction, because they're used pretty interchangeably in terms of on the internet, how they use. People will call sarcasm or irony the same thing, and this is sort of consistent with other research. So yeah, when I'm saying sarcasm, other people might say it's irony. We're sort of talking about the same thing here. Okay, so sort of the reason why sarcasm in particular is sort of a relevant thing is I've put down sort of some of the more like kind of higher level academic ideas of why it's necessary. So things like, yeah, sentiment analysis, things like cyberbullying online, cyberbullying detection, online moderation. It can also be things like online product reviews. People will put sarcastic comments, and again, at first glance, they can seem positive, but they're actually very negative. And then in terms of like for humans, obviously, just if you're a non-native speaker going to a native English-speaking country, or even not just English, sarcasm is in all sorts of languages, but being able to understand sarcasm in that second language is useful, just to be able to sort of ingratiate yourself within the society. Our actual study aims was to look at the models and their performance, comparing it with non-native speakers, and the idea that through error analysis we could potentially identify insights for both improving the models and for EFL teaching. I'll talk a bit later, but with this sort of second part here, I'm not specifically looking at just sarcasm, although this study is. I'm hoping to expand it into sort of other areas, but sarcasm detection is the one we're looking at here. So sort of moving on to the study, we use the data from a study called a conference called FIGLAN 2020. So it's bi-yearly, every 2 years, a conference, and obviously, as you can tell from the title, it focuses on figurative language datasets. The most recent Sarcasm dataset is from the year 2020, so that's why we use that one. The benefits of using an existing corpus for something like this is, apart from the fact these can take a long time to make a useful one, the fact that it's been proven and it's got studies that we can compare it against makes it quite a useful data set. So in the case of FigLang 2020, it's useful because all the comments have been pre-labeled. There's a bit of an argument about which type of labeling is better, whether you should have the original author of a comment choose whether something is sarcastic or not based on their intention. So that's used through like tags that I mentioned before, or whether it should be how it's interpreted. This study chose the former. So the comments were labeled by the original author, and then they were checked by the creators of this data set. And it's large, so it's actually double this, but there's we only use the Reddit data, not the Twitter data. So the Twitter is another 3,500 training and 300 testing. Excuse me, sorry, it's 3,500 training and testing, but we only used 300 of the testing because with models, 3,500 is easy, but with humans, 3,500 is a lot of comments to go through. And it also includes context, and like I say, yeah, the comments are all from Reddit. So these are the models we used. Yeah, so I'll sort of just very quickly go through them, but if you do have any questions, do let me know, because I sort of don't know what level to go in with these, level of detail to go in with these. But yeah, we used two BERT-based models, Roberta and DBERTA. So this one made improvements in terms of how the model runs, so things like dynamic masking and larger mini batches in the iterations of training it. And DBERTA used less training data, so it's much more efficient, and then other methods to improve Roberta. And logistic regression is, if you're familiar with statistics, it's a similar sort of thing. It's used a lot in binary classification. So in this case, sarcastic or not sarcastic, and use the sigmoid function. The other tools we used was AntConc, which is a concordance software to analyze the opera of kind of things like false positives and false negatives. It calculates things using a keyness value, and TF-IDF for common patterns in errors. Okay, so yeah, moving on to the participants and the tasks. So we had 39 participants, and by nature of being in Japan, a lot of the participants were Japanese. So we had them do a self-assessed English ability, which is again consistent within a lot of studies where self-assessed fluency is quite similar to actual fluency. So that's what we thought that was appropriate. And so yeah, a third of them said they were fluent, and about 40% said they were reasonable in English. 60% of them had never heard of Reddit at all. Age range was 18 to 48, but average was 29. Like I said before, there was 300 test comments. Each participant saw 30 comments. There was an even split between sarcastic and not sarcastic, and half of them had context, half of them had no context, to see if there's any differences there. All right, and then some of the results from the study. So up here is the computed results. So this is kind of the common accuracy scores that looked at. So there's accuracy, precision, recall, F1. DBERTA was the best in accuracy and precision, and Roberta was the best in recall and F1. And then down here is just like a straight average, sort of what percentage of them they got correct. And the highlighted boxes here are the ones that were closer to the non-native speakers. And as you can see, in 3 out of 4, the logistic regression model was closer to the non-native speakers. In particular, that's with the not sarcastic side, which I'm going to talk more about later. But as a sort of preamble to that, basically the non-native speakers, as well as the logistic regression, tended to perform better at deciding if something was definitely not sarcastic rather than sarcastic. So going a bit more into these results, because the numbers are a bit meaningless. These are some of the common false positives that came up with the humans. So on the false positive side, the three that I've highlighted here, McCabe, feminist, and Brazil, on their own probably don't really mean very much, but all three of these tended to be among political topics. So as I said, they were all comments from Reddit, and all the comments that these were from were related to something political at the time. So I've got a feeling off the top of my head, the feminist ones were often related to the Me Too movement. So because the conference was in 2020, so the comments would have been taken from 2018, 2019, and I believe that, for example, was related to that. Yeah, so there was three in there that were closely related to politics in the false positives, and in the false negatives, the sort of category that they tended to be in was just very normal conversation. So I've given one example here. So lol has nothing to do with eating avocados. He's just a lazy millennial, which was tagged as sarcastic. So apparently this is a sarcastic comment, but people thought they were not sarcastic. And like I said, these comments tended to be just very normal comments that, again, as a native speaker, if I just saw this, it's very hard to say if that's sarcastic or not without context. So that's tended to happen in the negative, the false negatives. Sorry. So just a sort of a bit of summary of that is within the 100% incorrect. So all the non-native speakers that tried it, they got them all wrong. 20 of the 26 were sarcastic and 6 were not sarcastic. So yeah, sort of going back to what I said before, is the non-native speakers generally tended to be better at saying if something was definitely not sarcastic rather than saying something was sarcastic. And in the not sarcastic swear words, a lot of them included swear words. So I think a lot of the non-native speakers, if they saw those kind of swear words, they would just assume it's being sarcastic. I can only speculate why, but certainly in Japan, I think there's an image that sarcasm is a bit mean. It's always mean. So seeing those swear words made them possibly assume that it was sarcastic. And questions as well appeared a lot. So in the 100% correct list, sorry, this is actually worded quite confusingly. What they're trying to say here is questions 10 out of the 100% correct incorrect list, so that's this 26 over here, 10 of them contained questions, whereas the 100% correct list, so there's 41 comments that all the non-native speakers got correct, only 4 of them include questions. So sorry, I'm actually reading this now, it's quite confusing, but the point being that questions tended to confuse non-native speakers. They also tended to think they were sarcastic as well. There's a few that I felt was mislabeled. So this one here, he's too busy selling off all his slaves to pay the debts on his lavish lifestyle to notice. I think this was about Trump off the top of my head. And again, I'm pretty sure this is being sarcastic. This does not come across to me as a serious comment, but it was labeled as serious. It was, as in, it didn't have the tag sarcastic. So in the data, it was not sarcastic. And then these ones, like, wasn't his post deleted and his account banned? If they don't have context, who's to say what that is? And I think this one was tagged as sarcastic, and people, I mean, I think rightly felt that was not sarcastic. So an issue with the data there. So just as a quick example from these, we've got 4 sentences here that were in the data and the non-native speakers really struggled with. So maybe just in the comments, what do you think these were? So maybe S for sarcastic and N for not sarcastic. So the first one here, nah, stay away from Oregon. That place is terrible. Just in the chat, what do you guys think? Is this sarcastic S or not sarcastic N? Got 3 N so far. So yeah, this one was apparently, oh yeah, Lucas, you got it. Dr. Fromot's, yeah. Apparently this was sarcastic. So yeah, I mean, if you think Oregon is a terrible place, then maybe it's not sarcastic. Lucas, as an American, maybe you realize what a wonderful place Oregon is. But yeah, so this was tagged as sarcastic, but Portland is terrible. I mean, I'll have to take your word for it. I've never been, but yeah. So that's the non-native speakers obviously sort of agreed with you because this is sarcastic according to the original author, but lots of the non-native speakers got confused with that one. All right, the next one, like I said, wasn't his post deleted and his account banned? Just from reading this without context, what do you guys think? Is this sarcastic or not sarcastic? Yeah, lots of ends. I would agree with you. I would think that's not sarcastic, and apparently this was sarcasm. So this is the kind of thing where we would need context, and for this one it wasn't provided, because presumably the previous comments would make it clear this was sarcastic, but in this case, that's what we got. How could you play the game, traitor? What do we think? N or S there? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think, okay, we've got sort of a half and half there. This one was sarcasm, but again, like it could easily be either depending on what context is in there, but yeah, sarcasm. And then finally, the English language should be exclusively written in Times New Roman and other serif fonts to avoid this issue. Yeah, I would agree with you, but apparently that was not sarcastic. I mean, maybe this person has very strong opinions about how the English language should be written. Yeah, exactly, Lucas. Wait, sorry, I think they didn't mean it as S, but it is. Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. The point being really that without this kind of background context, I mean, maybe this is a joke and not sarcastic. I mean, what's the difference there? But anyway, the point was in this data, this was tagged as not sarcastic, and therefore it was if the non-native speakers or the models said sarcastic, they would be wrong, even though, I mean, most people there said sarcastic, and I tend to agree with that as well. So this is some of the issues with the data, and that it can't be perfect. Yeah, unintentionally sarcastic, or sorry, so the not sarcastic is what it was tagged as in the original author did not give that a sarcastic tag, and so therefore in the data set it was classed as not sarcastic. But this was one of the ones that the non-native speakers made a mistake with, so they all thought it was sarcastic. I hope that makes sense. Right, exactly. So not everyone tags things, and another issue is, for example, I like to use the casual UK subreddit, and in there they will say, we are British, we should not need a sarcastic tag, and they will actually get angry at people who tags it sarcastic. So there are kind of in-group communities there on places like Reddit. Yeah, exactly. So that is, yeah, that's what I was saying at the start. There is, you know, who should be the arbiter of if a comment is sarcastic. It could be received as sarcastic, even though it wasn't meant as it, and it could be meant as sarcastic, but nobody understands it as sarcasm. So if a comment is sarcastic in the woods, does anybody hear it or something like that? Yes, so moving on now to the models that they had errors with. The reason I'm highlighting some of the words here is because they were exactly the same as the non-native speakers in the top 10 of content words. So by content words, just to be clear, that I mean words not like the and an and. So yeah, C, Twitter, and feminist, all these three were the same top 10 words as the non-native speakers. Again, Twitter and feminist, sorry, feminist being related to politics. Yeah, so that's a good question about the data set not being reliable. I I'm obviously highlighting some of the examples where it's not reliable. Over the course of 3,500, it's quite possible that it is a lot more reliable. The reason why we choose these data sets that are from pre-existing studies is they are more likely to have been proven to be robust. But the point is they're not perfect, and if certain test comments happen to appear because they're chosen at random that are difficult or mislabeled, that can be an issue. So it's worth running through the testing data and highlight these potential errors. And that's sort of like the purpose of the study in a way, is finding out what kind of errors do appear so we can go back and potentially clean up the data set for another run. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Garbage in, garbage out. So lots of stuff comes in, and then hopefully we can prune the data set. I've got a feeling these S and N's are going to appear throughout this chat now. Yeah, so these ones were the same as the non-native speakers, and again here. So like I was saying before, these topics were kind of banal, and this one was certainly political. So you can see that both models and non-native speakers do have overlap in their false positives and false negatives. Ooh, sorry, I'm going. This is just kind of an interesting thing. Now, I ran the model several times, and yet it still was this kind of quite perfectly split data set, which looks too suspicious to be true, but it seems to be true. The models, all the models getting incorrect. There was nothing in the sarcastic data that all the models made mistakes with, but there was 31 non-sarcastic ones. And then on the other hand, there was 32 sarcastic ones that all the models got correct, and then a pretty even split between the ones that got 1 or 2. That should be a 0, not a minus. Like I said before, this kind of leans into the fact that the models are much better at detecting if something is sarcastic, but the logistic regression model and the non-native speakers are much better at detecting if something is definitely not sarcastic. Exclamation marks really appeared a lot in this. So these were sarcastic, which the model struggled with. And again, mislabeling came up. So this was one that a lot of the models made a mistake with. Or you can upgrade to the deluxe package for $70 to also receive Polio and a lifelong wallet-shaped cool metal box. I think this was in relation to, no, it wasn't COVID. But anyway, so this was one of the ones that the model struggled with. This was sarcastic. I think, again, the punctuation is, if for some reason, difficult for the models. If it sees punctuation, it really struggles to correctly identify them. Okay, so some of the similarities and differences between the two. So these two comments were the only two that all the models and all the non-native speakers got incorrect. So this one, but what if it's my birthday today, was sarcastic? Again, you clearly need context for this. And the one I mentioned before, all the models and all the humans got this wrong. So punctuation confuses both. Question marks more the non-native speakers, and exclamation marks confuse the models more, but in both cases it confused them. There's arguments about cleaning the data to get rid of those things, but that then makes the data a lot less authentic than what it is being posted as. Models tend to be much more influenced by spelling mistakes, I think, because even non-native speakers, you know, they can tell what a word is or what it could be. If the spelling mistake maybe led to a completely different meaning, that might be a different thing. But the non-native speakers tend to be much better at noticing if it's a spelling error, because you know the models don't have any ability to sort of guess what a word might be. It just takes the words, the letters as they are. The models were much more kind of evenly spread across their abilities than humans, as you saw by the previous table. The humans tended to be really good at some things and not good at other things. And of course, mislabeling is a problem for both. So yeah, areas they have struggled to succeed with. Non-native speakers better at determining something isn't sarcastic, followed by the logistic regression model. Generally, the logistic regression model was closer to the non-native speakers and predictions. DBERT was the second closest. Political topics appear in false positives, normal and false negatives, and then generally Roberta outclassed everyone. Did the training involve labeling or self-supervised? Yeah, so the training data for the models was all labeled, yeah. And it had two sections where half the data had context and half the data did not have context. Yeah, so it wasn't like a zero-shot learning or anything. So next is sort of applications, because so far that's a kind of lot of data that is and analysis, but then how can we use in the classroom? So like I said before, I'm not expecting sarcasm itself to have a huge use in the classroom. You know, there's only so much you can do about teaching sarcasm. It's a fairly limited skill. I can't imagine teaching a whole course or module on sarcasm. But what it does lead into is figurative language and sort of pattern grammar, which these kind of models and comparison studies can be useful for detecting. And yeah, so advanced reading and writing and this error analysis of models versus humans can sort of help identify what humans struggle with and how models might inform teaching in those areas. But FigLang looks at many different areas. So 2022 was euphemisms, another area that non-native speakers can struggle with. And again, these kind of model non-native speaker comparisons could potentially highlight areas that they will struggle with. So rather than a single lesson on sarcasm, you might look more like a course on figurative language with every few weeks being a different point. So yeah, the targeted error analysis, so this is using the big data. So Lucas and I, the university we work at, there's a big writing corpus that was being collected over the last few years, and like looking at that and having it analyzed on this sort of larger scale could be really useful in comparing it against sort of native speakers writing. Fine-tuning chatbots. So again, this would not be very useful for specifically sarcasm, but using the data of this kind of error analyses on chatbots can make it much more specific to the learners that you're working with. And then, yeah, this kind of further advanced analysis. And then looking into the future, what we've been researching more recently, first of all, memes, that's what we've been doing over the last few months. So making it multimodal. And so far, a combination of Clip, which is OpenAI's visual detection model, and GPT-4o, this kind of combination of visual and textual analysis has been the most effective so far. But this time, the first study, we just got non-native speakers, but it'd be good to get in native speakers as potentially like a gold standard. The idea being if they can't detect the sarcasm, then is it truly sarcasm? We looked a bit at a Japanese sarcasm, but this is probably going to be a no-go because there's no corpus with tags already, and the cultural differences are just too different there. There's a few studies that basically say it's pretty hard to do a comparison study with that. Hopefully make some lesson plans using results of research, again, not specifically just sarcasm, but other areas. Pipelines as well, this is another thing we're trying to work on, is making it more efficient. So some of these suggestions that I was saying here, it's quite a lot of work to do a bespoke training, testing, analysis model. But if you have this kind of pipeline that has it all ready for you, where you just plug and play with the data, this can really improve the efficiency. And then offering access for others to use these pipelines so that more data is available. I thought I'd end with this quote just for Lucas. Okay, yeah, there are my references. Some QR codes to this is the Google form that's being used to collect data. This one's for my website, which we're using the same thing, but it's not working perfectly correctly at the moment. So maybe stick to the Google form for now if you are interested. Yeah, I think that's everything from me. Do you have any questions? How long was that? 35 minutes. All right. Yeah. going to turn off my slides, but if you want to see anything again, please let me know. I'm detecting sarcasm from you now, Lucas.
I'm forgetting the name of it now, but you were talking about a pipeline, and I know that Anthropic is looking to make a standardized, I have the acronym for it. There's so many acronyms these days with this, but basically it's a way to, it's like a RAG system where you could put in a data set, and then you would be able to give LLMs access to this data set that it could reference before giving feedback. And so if you had a clean up version of your sarcasm analysis and tags, I think that yeah, potentially you could use that so that chatbots could do so.
Yeah, we've ChatGPT's O1 model has been really useful for sort of like helping with pipelines. It's got that advanced reasoning right now, but yeah, Anthropic Claude has been much better with the coding side of things. But yeah, it's interesting, exciting to see what's going to happen next, like you say.
Just a thought, Oliver. Thank you for your wonderful presentation for us. I just wanted to, because you showed two things. One was that the model that you have is good with detecting things that are definitely sarcastic, right? And the other side, the humans, the non-native speakers, were equally good at detecting something that is not sarcastic, right? Now,
right, yeah.
The training that your model has had, and perhaps another model that could be trained on a normal data set, could that be used to enhance the overall output of the function, because then you would have a better figures in your confusion matrix, right? Because you wouldn't make the mistakes you're making right now if you had two models jointly working together. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's sort of a point I should have maybe mentioned before. Is my target here is not to get the best model at detecting sarcasm, because there are I am not like a CS major. There are much better engineers out there who can get better results than mine. The results of my model were not cutting edge. There are much better models out there. What we were more looking at is there anything that can be used that is similar or can inform teaching education for students? So it's not necessarily good to get a better result in terms of higher accuracy, rather one that's closer to the non-native speakers, so it can be used to potentially predict other areas that they might struggle with. So in my study, dBERTA was the best model, but again, it was nowhere near as good as a proper sort of machine learning engineer what they might achieve. But the logistic regression, which was not the best model in terms of accuracy, was the most sort of interesting for the study because it achieved those results that were so much closer to the students.
Oh, okay.
And that's potentially an avenue that could be useful for other areas of informing language materials.
Okay, no, that's very useful to know. Thank you.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Indeed.
Oliver, if I may, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your very insightful presentation. I was going to actually ask you a question with regards to the use case for the solution, because I mean, you started with that in your introduction, and I think this is really interesting to see how that can be used. As you said, for marketing, as said for cyber security and cyber bullying, which was really interesting. So, have you had any interest or specific use cases of using this kind of models?
Yeah, so I mean, again, it sort of relates back to what I was just saying there is for those kind of use cases, you do want the best model, the highest achieving model. And again, that is not what I have or am aiming for. And yeah, there's papers out there which show how I think like Amazon product reviews, there's been quite a few on that, sort of showing how they were tagged, they're flagged as like positive reviews. Like this customer said this, and highlighting it as a really positive one, but it totally wasn't. It was very sarcastic. And again, cyberbullying as well is another one that's come up quite a lot, like how to use sentiment analysis to detect like Twitter comments or something. Because again, they sound very positive, but actually being very sarcastic or snarky and actually harassment. So in terms of my model, no, that's not really a useful use case of what I'm doing, just because it's not particularly cutting edge. But there absolutely are like specific use cases that people are already implementing, better engineers than me. But, yeah.
No, I think your goal is different. So definitely you're trying to solve a different problem, and here you want the system to be a bit like somebody who can't detect. So you're actually solving it completely, which I didn't gather before, but it's great.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made that more clear, but thank you.
I just posted a message there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. I deal with humor in my classes. I'm in Japan, and there are two colleagues at my university who are they consider themselves humor scholars, and I would too. And they've published, I think, at least one paper about sarcasm instruction in their classes, teaching Japanese students. They've used things like headlines from The Onion in there, and I don't remember what their results were exactly, but I kind of dismissed it all because I just thought Onion headlines out of context, and they're not here, so I guess I can say what I want to about it. But it's very interesting that they felt that this need, and I guess I can see that as well. That in dealing with what they're both Americans too, and they feel like, contrary to your last comment and your last slide there, they feel like Americans are pretty good at using sarcasm, and they want the Japanese students to understand, if they're visiting and talking with foreign people, British people, American people, Australian people, that sometimes that's going to come out, and they're going to have to deal with it. In fact, there's an example that one of them talks about. An American baseball player plays in Japan. He had a terrible game. He was a pitcher, I think. He'd had a terrible game, and after the game, he was in front of the microphone, and a Japanese journalist asked him, "How did you feel about your game?" And he sarcastically said, "Oh, I thought it was a wonderful game. I had a great time out there." And it was in the headlines in the newspaper for the next couple of days that this pitcher thought he had done a good job. So the sarcasm was completely missed by the majority of people. So I can see
that does not surprise me. Yeah.
I can see a great. I think I can see what you're trying to get at. It is a way to help non-native speakers improve this understanding.
Right.
So I admire what you're doing.
Thanks. Is it John Rosinski and Caleb Pritchard?
That's who it is. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
And they got the link. I kind of thought they'd be here. It's 10 p.m. It's 9:40 p.m. here. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Americans.
Me and Lucas are Japan-based as well. Japan-based as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they're having Thanksgiving dinner now or something.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That was sarcastic.
Wait, when is Thanksgiving?
Like Scott said, I thought today.
Today, right?
It's today.
I was gonna say, like Scott was saying is that here in Japan, sarcasm, while there is Japanese sarcasm, it's pretty rare and doesn't exist as much. And so in our situation where we're teaching non-native speakers communication skills, especially the first world country who is interested in globalism and international change, sometimes these kind of interactions that are pretty common in the English-speaking world can cause a lot of problems. So I think that an interesting topic, because I think it hits us where we're working more, trying to help people understand and communicate, where this may not. I mean, I'd be interested to see what would happen with non-native speakers of culture that have more sarcasm in their native tongue. Yeah, I don't know what the result.
Like in the research, there's a few things like Spanish and Arabic. What else came up a reasonable amount, and Dutch a little bit, and that was also kind of people who spoke English as a first language, learning those languages and learning sarcasm in those languages. It sort of went both ways, and yeah, I mean that was more about the education. It wasn't like a natural language process or anything. It was looking at how it was taught and how it was analyzed, and there was interesting things there, sort of kind of similar results of how people could get it after a while because maybe they had a cultural background that already had sarcasm. So it sounds like, I mean, I don't know if anyone is a speaker of these languages, but Arabic, Spanish and Dutch speakers culturally had sarcasm already as a basis to come from. But like I said, in my sort of reading for the Japan side, so like hiniku is what they were talking about, and they said hiniku is the translation of sarcasm, but it's not a one-to-one, and how they use hiniku in like manga or novels is not how we use sarcasm at all. It's more like situational irony is the closest that could be translated to that, and it's just not how we use it at all in terms of like online comments. So that's why it was sort of a no-go in terms of looking at Japanese sarcasm in this.
Oliver, can I ask the question?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for presentation. Could you please clarify, maybe I missed your thought about how do you label the context of the chat? Because in online chat, everything goes so fast, and even one emoji can totally change the main thought. How did you fix it?
Yeah, sure. So in the data sets, the comments will have like comment and then context, and that's usually about the previous 3 comments before the sort of target comment. The non-native speakers, what they saw is half of the questions on the Google form had like in a bracket before that saying this is the context, like in speech marks, the different comments, and then they could use that to help them. In terms of the models, they basically got a similar thing. They got it all in one block. One point I didn't go into because I didn't know if it'd be of interest to people, but for this study, I didn't have context as like a separate parameter. So like the model analyze the context first and then adds that. That's what I'm hoping to do in the future. What the model had at the moment was like a big block of text, but the non-native speakers got to see them separately for half of the comments. Here's the context, here's the comment, and had a look if that aided them. And generally by the numbers, it didn't seem to aid them too much. I mean, possibly it's like it became too much language for them. It's like now that's a huge block of text they've got to analyze, and it became overwhelming. But yeah, it didn't seem to have any significant impact. Significant as in not statistically significant, just it didn't seem to have any kind of noticeable impact on their ability to detect. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, thank you again, Oliver, and thank you everyone for participating in today's seminar. So if there's no further question, then we're going to adjourn and give you a few minutes back to your day. Thank you all for coming again.
Yeah, thank you everyone, appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Bye.